Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this mini learning skills session, the second one. Today, we're going to talk briefly about how to use Excel to make a simple Gantt chart. So I'll be walking through kind of the tutorial materials that I sent out, and then give people time to ask questions and get any sort of clarification they might need. So at the top of the Google Doc, there's a link to a spreadsheet that has the examples in it. This tutorial, unlike the previous one, doesn't work really well in Google Sheets, so you'll want to download the file and use it in Excel on your computer. The data we'll be working with is pretty basic. You'll have a table with a row for each of your events, and then a start and end date that you type in, and then the duration is just a formula subtracting the start date from the end date, and that will give you a duration in number of days. And this is enough to do the visualization. So the first step is to select the start column and then go to the Insert tab. If you're on the newest version of Excel, it might be somewhere slightly different if you're in an older version, and choose to insert a stacked bar chart. And then after inserting the stacked bar chart, you want to right-click on it and go to Select Data. In here, we need to add in now the bars for our duration. So there should be an option under the Select Data Source to add an additional legend entry or series. You can give it a name, you don't have to. I'm just going to type in duration for name. And then there's a little pop-out button to select from your spreadsheet the values you want to use. And so click that, and then just select the duration values in your sheet. Go back to the Select Data Source options, and then you can just hit OK. And here you can see it has added in bars showing the duration. And this is kind of rough and messy, but has everything we need. And now the rest is just styling. So we want to remove the bars for the start. So we can left-click one of those to select it, right-click it. If you go to Format Data, you can change the fill to no fill. Didn't do all of them. So you want to change the fill on those to no fill, and that will hide that. And then only your duration is remaining. So there should be, if you want, so you don't have to do them one at a time, you should be able to right-click and format data series. So if you click on the axis, or if you right-click and don't left-click and select one, but just right-click and get to Format Data Series, and then you can change the fill to no fill, and it will hide those. There are other options as well. So you can change the gap width to less so that the bars are closer together. You can adjust your plot area so that they're a reasonable size. You can add in a title if you want. Sorry. You want your event order to match the order of the items. So you'll need to I'm sorry. Does anybody have any? The tutorial walks through in the exact steps. Was anybody able to use the tutorial to try this and do something similar to the example 2, wherein you flip the activities to match the order of your table? You can adjust the formatting of the labels for the dates in terms of how that displays. You can adjust the units to see. Sydney West says no, was not able to try the tour yet. So the Gantt chart shows you the duration of an activity, and you can very simply do this in Excel. Excel also, there's a link at the bottom to a template where they get very complex with it, including like percentage complete and a variety of different styling. You can achieve this just the duration with only these 3 columns, one of which is automatically calculated, and a stacked bar chart. So to get in reverse order, I've right-clicked the axis. I go to Format Axis, and then there's a box for categories in reverse order. You can see that flips it so that 1 is at the top, 3 is at the bottom. If I right-click and go back to Select Data Source, it provides the option for horizontal category axis labels. I can select the data from the chart itself using the same method I used to select the duration values. So if I right-click, I click that, and then select my data for my names, so in this case, the alpha, beta, Charlie, and then hit OK. It changes that to those values instead of the numbers. I'm going to shrink down my chart area some so that those aren't cut off. Here, looking at the x-axis dates, I can format that axis. Here, right now, the units are 50 days. If I adjust that to 28, should be every 4 weeks. You can change the text rotation. And all of the standard We can change the fill to red cross red. Why is it start? Okay, that's a good question. So for the start date, I'm not sure how it shows the default, but we can input that the bounds for the x-axis. We need to provide it in a number, not a date. So if we go to formatting the axis, we can see that bounds is in these 42,000 something, 43,000 something. So we can get that. We see our start date is 3/15. So we're just going to say, I'm going to type in just a random cell on the page, 3/1/2017, and then change the formatting from that cell from date to general. And then it'll change it to a number here. We can see 42,795. I can delete that cell, and if I go to my axis and then change the minimum bounds to that 42,795, it'll change the start date to 3/1. And here, if we here we can see I've dropped the units for the major from 28 to 14, so every 2 weeks. So we can see there's a line at March 1st, the 15th, the 29th, and then every time after that. So you can kind of modify things here. Second question, is there a way to define the major units to always be the first day of the month? If there is, I haven't figured that out because the units are a set interval in days, not in months, are variable in the number of days. But for planning purposes, like I think a lot of times, or not a lot, but sometimes with like project planning, you like the first, you're working on like business weeks, like the first, so you could set the minimum to a Monday, and then you would know that every line is like the start of a new work week. These are dates. So here, just like a 1 month thing, just the most basic example with one line. Start date, going to insert my stacked bar chart. I'm going to right click my data and go select data. Going to add an additional series. This will be my duration. I'm going to then select the duration that I haven't done yet. Select data, add a series, select my duration, which is 30 in this case, hit OK, adds that in there. I can then right-click my axis and format. If there were more than one category, more than one event, I could put it in reverse order so that they show up in the proper order. I can format my data series, add. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Under select data is where I can find also the labels option, so I can change my label to the event. Right-click my data, format data series, and then I can change the fill to no fill. I want to change the bounds of my chart. So I'm just typing the 2 dates I want to use and changing it to general instead of a date. And then under my format axis for the x-axis, I have the bounds, minimum and maximum. I can change those to the 43101, which represents January 2018, and the 43465, which is December. And I'm going to change my major unit to every 4 weeks, or oops, sometimes 20. Okay. And that's, Amy says, oh,
Hey, this is Amy. I can just talk to instead of typing. Yeah, I'm just like looking under the axis options. It seems like it would be really nice if Excel, when you're defining like the minimum and maximum balance and then the major and minor units, if you could tell it right there, like, hey, these are dates. So, and you could set your major unit to be weeks or months, right? And it would automatically know that's a date, so it's going to do the first of the month, or like, you know, every Wednesday or something like that. So I understand that if you go down under access options under number, that you can define it as a date, and you can, you can set it as the format you want the date to show, whether you just show month and date or whether you show the year also. But it would just be nice if that setting under number to say this is a date, if that also applied to above where you're setting the balance and the units.
Yeah. I don't.
What does that link to source mean? That checkbox.
Not sure.
This is Susan. I think that's if you have a like a report that you run on a regular basis, and so you have a source document that sheet is pulling from, and if that updates, then it automatically would update the Gantt chart.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Sorry for the rough start today. Hopefully the materials were more helpful than I was. And if you have any questions after looking at through those later, you can reach out to me via Slack, email, or whatever. In the calendar invite link, there's a link to a survey that would I'd appreciate if you could fill that out. Always welcome more suggestions for topics that could be covered. And thank you for attending.
Thank you.